Yeah, look, we thought we got over the worst of it, but this week was a reminder that we're still not just there yet. And I suppose there's nearly a tale of two halves, James. Like there's guys who managed even through that rough period, probably drier farms, and guys that are going after grazing more intensely, and they were sort of on target. And then this week has sort of, maybe just upset it a little bit because the growths have dropped, and then maybe need to react by increasing meal or even some silage into the diet to hold farm cover. These are guys that are, the farm cover dropped maybe down into the 500s, and they need to hold it up there. And they know what they know what they have to do that, or else they run the risk of going into too light covers. And then at the other side of things, we have farms, maybe more heavier farms, or farms that just grew well during that good week, and the farm covers. Some two groups of mine that have ran group reports for the last week have farm covers near 1,000 on average. So there's guys up at 11, 12, 1,300 kilos of dry matter per hectare. So you have farms basically with double the amount of grass than other farms. So there's an average there of 788, but that's, some of them are down in the 5 to 600 range, and more of them then are over probably the 11, 1,200 range. And those farms are going to have to manage differently over the next week. But looking at the weather forecast, there is good news. Like if we go down, the predicted rainfall for the next week is maybe around half an inch of rain from most places, maybe a little bit more. Grass growth prediction, we're looking up for the east and the south into the late 50s, early 60s, and maybe towards the west, maybe not getting as much sunshine, and that's probably more down into the early 50s, maybe even late 40s in some cases. So that's where we're at. So most farms should know their demand now. They should know their demand, know their stocking rate, and know what they need to grow. And if in the case where some farms still grew, where their farm cover was good, still grew what they needed to grow this week without having to do anything, well then next week the grass growth is going to jump because of the weather conditions. Soil temperatures are up as well. So what is this? Like, we have to be ready for this. This happens every year. We go from maybe just even feeding some silage this week for some farms, and all of a sudden we have to turn on and we have to get into summer grazing mode. Okay, we got a feel for it there a couple of weeks ago when as you said, with that sunshine, but we have to get ready to go at it again. So how do we do that? Like, there's no better way than just to walk your farm and actually know your own growth rates, know what your own farm cover is, know what your own pre-grazing yield is. That is the best way to do this. Okay, there's no other way around it. And what happens? So if farm covers are getting heavy, so what I mean heavy, I'm sort of saying if it's over 800 kilos of dry matter, you're starting to go into covers of 1,800 coming into May. That will quickly multiply into 2,500 within a week or two if people aren't careful. And what's coming into the sward over the next week or two? There's stem coming into the sward over the next week or two. So I would be advising people to use the projected planner on pasture base to make their grazing decisions. So they can pull out a paddock or two, they could pull out a paddock for reseeding. Maybe the heifers could go back and graze a paddock or two on the block. And they're the sort of the decisions that need to be made to keep grass quality right if there's too much grass on the farm. Likewise, some people might have to put an extra feed this week. They can project ahead based on those predicted growth rates where their farm will be this week. But either way, walking the farm, getting out and seeing what's on the ground and making the decisions is vital over the next week or 10 days as we're coming up into this peak growth. Like we were talking before the call there, like even up the northeast where you are, James, not much growth happens up until this point, and all of a sudden it just skyrockets. And that's what happens. So we're going from like spring, winter sort of mode to summer mode very quickly. And if we're not prepared, if we're not ahead of that, what happens is protein suffer, yields suffer in the next couple of months because of that, because of what's happening over the next week or two. So make sure to be up to date with fertilizer as well and get sulfur out. A lot of people haven't bought sulfur, it seems. So, if you have some fertilizer in the yard, maybe it could be saved for the autumn time and try and get something with sulfur in it now to get it out. And look, we're trying to get clover on farms, so reseeding and even oversowing a paddock this week. Dip your toe in the water with oversowing. It's a very simple way of doing it. It requires a little bit of extra management and looking after it, but it's a great way, cheap way to get clover onto the farm and get benefit from that point of view. And just make sure you're grazing out paddocks well, because stem is going to come in over the next couple of weeks.